In this video, I'll introduce you to some more objects in AutoCAD. We will start with polylines. See, polyline in AutoCAD is treated as a complex object. So what is meant by a complex object? In a complex object, you can see objects within objects. Let's see a polyline. So I'll click on the polyline command in the drop panel, or else you can type the letter PL to invoke polyline command. Then I'm asked to specify a start point, then the next point, and these points can be defined using any of the normal point entry modes or methods. Then I'll pick the next point. I have created two segments. Now if I want, I can switch over to the arc option. So I'll click on arc. Now you can see that the next segment will be an arc segment. Then I'll pick the next point. Now here you can come across with all those options with which we have constructed arcs before. For example, if I want, I can give a second point option. So I'll click on second point, then I can pick a second point, then I can pick an end point. So this is a start point, second point, end point arc. Likewise, you can make use of any of these options to construct arcs depending upon the requirement. Next, I'll go to the width option. So when you go to width option, it will ask you to specify a starting width. I'll give a starting width of 0. So I'll give an enter. Then the next ending width I'll give 200. So you can see that this particular arc segment has a tapered width. Now I'll go to width again. The ending width of the most recent segment will appear as the starting width of the current segment. So I'll just give an enter. I want to give 200 as the starting width for the next segment, and the ending width I'll bring back to 0. The next point I'll pick here. Okay, now I would like to go back to the line mode. So click on the line here. Now I'm back to the line mode, and if I want, I can just close it. It'll get connected with the starting vertex along a straight segment. Let's see the speciality of a polyline. When you click on a polyline, you can see that even if it is made up of a number of segments, it will remain as a single unit. That's a property of a complex object. The second property is that a polyline has got a varying width. So this is an attribute which is specific to polyline. Let's see the advantages of using a polyline in a drawing. So a polyline, since it remains as a single object, the object selection is very easy. For example, if I want to move this polyline to a different place, I'll just click on move command. When I click on the polyline, you can see that the entire polyline will get selected in one click because it's a single object. Another advantage of using a polyline is that we can execute certain editing commands such as fillet, chamfer, offset, etc. more effectively on a polyline. Let's see that. I'll erase this polyline. Then I'll draw another polyline. Let it indicate the wall layout of a residence. So I'll pick a number of points to construct lines. These are all just not per the dimensions, but just to show you the example. Then I'll go to arc option. Then I'll just come back to the line. You can also get the options of polyline by right clicking the mouse. And if you want to go to line mode, just click on line. Now I have switched over to the line mode. Then I'll just pick one more point over here, another point here, one more here. Then I would like to pick a point corresponding to this here. I'll track these 2 points and I'll get a point over here. Then right click and I'll just give a close. And this profile indicates the wall layout. Now I would like to give an offset command to show the wall thickness. So I'll go to offset. To specify the offset distance, I'll pick 2 points. And this is the object to offset, side to offset. So you can see that in one click we have offsetted the entire polyline. Okay, that's the advantage. Suppose if this polyline remains as individual objects, what difficulty you must have encountered? Let's see that. I'll erase this offsetted polyline. Then by giving an explode command, you will be able to bring a polyline back to individual objects. So I'll give X for explode. Okay, now I'll offset again. I'll pick 2 points to specify the offset distance, then select object side, object side, object side, then object side. Likewise, you have to perform as many offsets as the number of objects. Plus, you should perform this corner clearances. We can clear these corners using the fillet command, right? So I'll go to fillet command and I shift click to get these corners filleted. That means you have to perform as many fillets as the number of corners. So your job will get multiplied. Next, we will execute fillet and chamfer commands on polylines. I'll draw a polyline and let it indicate a pipeline. Now I would like to add a bend at the corners. For that I should perform fillets, right? So I'll go to fillet. Then I'm asked to give a radius. I'll pick 2 points to specify the radius. You can also give a numeric value. Then I'll go to polyline option of fillet command. When you're asked to select the polyline, in one click you can fillet all the corners simultaneously. But if it remains as individual objects, you should perform as many fillets as the number of corners. Same is the case with chamfer command. We can use a polyline to create complex profiles and curves which may be used to make 3D objects. Let's see an example. Using a polyline, I would like to create a profile of a pillar. So I'll start from here. I'll make the capital first, pillar capital. So then I'll go to arc option. So right click, you go to arc option. I'll turn the ortho mode off. Then I'll go to second point because AutoCAD is trying to draw arc this way. Suppose if I want to reverse the curve in the opposite direction, then I should make use of the second point. So I'll go to second point and I'll pick the point over here. Then next point here. Then again right click, go to second point, and I want to reverse my curve onto this point. Now I would like to go back to the line mode, go to line. Okay. And then I'll pick a point over here. Then go to arc mode again. Likewise, you can interactively switch over from line to arc. Now I'll go to line again. Okay, and turn the ortho mode on. And I'll pick a point over here like this to create the pillar base. Okay, then I'll pick a point corresponding to this point here. By tracking it, I'll get it. Now right click and close. This profile can be used to create a 3D pillar. Another advantage of using a polyline is that you can edit a polyline using polyline edit or pedit command. Let's make a polyline and try this. Now I'll go to pedit. It's available in modify panel and you have the polyline edit option. Then you select this polyline. Now we have the first option as close. When you click on close, it will connect an open polyline with a straight segment. When a closed polyline can be opened using the open option. Then we have a width option with which you can provide a uniform width for all the polyline segment. Suppose if I give a width of 100, these segments took a width of 100 units. Now I'll go to width again and bring it back to 0. Next I have a fit option with which you can create a smooth curve passing through all the vertices of a polyline. Then you have another type of curve called spline curve, which will let you create a curve which is even more smoother than a fit curve, but it will not pass through the vertices. Then you have the decurve option to bring the polyline back to the original form. Suppose you have a number of objects, and if you want to convert these objects into a polyline, it can be done using the pedit command. Let's see that. I'll draw a line. Then I'll draw an arc. That is a 3-point arc. I'll just give an enter to start from the endpoint of the most recently drawn arc. Then just give one more enter to start another arc from the endpoint of the recently drawn arc. So I have got 3 objects. These are all 3 separate objects. Now I want to convert this into a single object. You can do that with the help of the polyline edit command. So I'll go to modify, select polyline edit and select the polyline. Now the software will ask you, the selected object is not a polyline. Do you want to convert this into a polyline? Yes is the default. So just give an enter. Now we have a join option and you select all these objects to be joined as a single object. Now just give one more enter to go out of the polyline command. You can see that it is converted to a single object. And if you want to bring all these objects back to individual objects, you can explode it. So type X to explode and select it. Now it is back to simple objects. Alternatively, you can also give join command in the modify panel. So you can click on the join command and you select all the profiles to be joined. Okay, now it is back to a single polyline. You will be able to join segmental objects only if these objects are having perfect end-to-end contact. Next we will create rectangles. I'll click on rectangle command. Then I'll click my first corner here, drag my mouse and click the opposite corner. I can create rectangles to the precise dimensions. I give enter to repeat the rectangle command and I'll click my first corner here. Then I have a dimension option over here. It will ask me for the length. I'll give the length as say 700. Enter. Then I'll give a width of 350. Now it will ask you to pick the opposite corner point. Okay. If I pick my opposite corner point in the leftward direction, my rectangle will appear like this. If it is rightward, it will appear like this. It can be downward. In any orientation you can pick it. I'll just pick to define the opposite corner point. Now I'll give enter to repeat the rectangle command. You can also create filleted rectangles. So I'll click on fillet and I'll give a fillet radius of 250. Now it will ask me to pick the first corner and the opposite corner. Now when I drag my mouse, the corners of this rectangle will get filleted through a radius of 250 units. Similarly, you can perform chamfer in the rectangle command. We have a chamfer option and thickness and elevations are basically used in 3D. Now we have a width option. Width option can be used to create a thick rectangle. I'll give a width of 50. Then I'll pick my first corner here, drag my mouse, and you can see that it is a thick rectangle. Now I'll go to rectangle and I'll bring the width back to 0. And I'll give the fillet radius to 0. Now you can create rotated rectangles if you want. So I'll click my first corner here, then I'll go to rotation option and I'll give a rotation angle of 45 degrees. Now this rectangle will appear only in 45 degrees. You can specify the length and width depending upon the requirement, or you can just pick the opposite corner. You can also create rectangles by specifying an area. I'll give rectangle. Now I'll pick my first corner here. I'll go to rotation and I'll bring it back to 0. Now I'll go to area option and I'll give an area of 1,50,000. 1,50,000. Now I'll click my first corner here. Now I should give a length. Let the length be 300. This rectangle has got an area of 1,50,000 and the length of this is 300 and the width will get adjusted correspondingly. So that's all about rectangles. Next I'll talk about the polygon command. You can create polygons in AutoCAD using the polygon command, which is available under the rectangle command. You can either click on the polygon button over here in the top panel, or else you can type the letter POL. Now when you give polygon, it will ask you for the number of sides. Suppose if I want to construct a hexagon, I can give a number of sides as 6. Then you have two options here. One is a center point of a polygon, another one is edge. Using a center point, you can create a polygon using a circle as a reference. Using the edge option, you can specify the length of an edge and you can construct a polygon. I'll use center point of the polygon. So I'll click on the center. Then it will ask you to define whether you want the polygon to be inscribed or circumscribed. If you choose inscribed, the polygon will be constructed inside the reference circle. If you choose circumscribed, it will be constructed outside the circle. I'll go for inscribed. And now it will ask you to specify the radius of that particular circle. I'll give a radius as 1000 units. Now this polygon is drawn inside a circle with the radius of 1000 units. Let's check that out. So I'll go to circle command and I'll use 3-point option. I'll select the first point, second point and the third point. Now let's list this circle. When I give list command, I'll get complete information related with an object in AutoCAD. I'll give list. I'll select the object to be listed. Now I'll get the radius value as 1000. Similarly, you can also construct a polygon circumscribed about a circle. In that case, the polygon will be constructed outside the circle. Now let's see the edge option. So I'll go to polygon command again. Now it will ask you to define the number of sides. I'll give 5. To construct a pentagon, now you have an edge option. It will ask you to define the first endpoint of the edge, then the second endpoint of the edge. Suppose I want the side length to be 1000 units. I can define as 1000. Now this polygon has got a side length of 1000 units. When I have defined the second point, my cursor was in the rightward direction and the ortho mode was on. That is why the second point is plotted here. Suppose I want to change the orientation or rotation of this polygon. That can also be done. So I'll go to polygon. I'll give enter to construct a pentagon. Now I'll go to edge option. First endpoint of the edge I'll pick here. Next endpoint, when I'm asked, I'll just turn off the ortho mode. You can move the mouse and you can see a little preview of how this polygon is actually going to come. I want the second point to be at a distance of 1000 units at an angle of 30 degrees. So I can give the second point as at the rate 1000 less than 30. So this point is defined at an angle of 30 degrees with respect to the horizontal. So this is how you control the orientation of a polygon when you construct it. In AutoCAD, a polygon will remain as a single object. It's a complex object. Okay, so that's all about polygons. Next we will create ellipses. So I'll go to ellipse command in the draw panel and I'll choose the center method. I'll click the center point. Now I am asked to define the end point of the axis. So I'll define the first axis endpoint like this by picking, and the next axis endpoint, when I move my mouse, this will become a major axis, and I'll pick a point to define the next axis. These points can be defined using any of the point entry methods we have learned, like absolute, relative or polar. Next we will see the axis endpoint method. In this method, you first define an axis by defining 2 points like this. Then you define the endpoint of the other axis. Now we come to the elliptical arcs. I'll click on ellipse, then I'll select elliptical arc. I'm asked to give the first endpoint, then the next endpoint, then the next endpoint I'll pick. Then I'm asked to specify the distance to the other axis. I'll just again pick to define that distance. Now I am asked to give the start angle. I'll give 0 as a start angle. Then end angle I am asked to give. I'll give 90. So this is how that elliptical arc will appear. That means if I draw a line from this end point to the center to this particular angle will be 90 degree. So this is how you construct elliptical arcs. So that's all about ellipses.